Just gonna ask you a few questions to start with your name and job title.
I'm Rob Wilfong. I'm a scout with the area scout with the Angels, and this is my 30th year of scouting.
Can you just give me a job description of what does a scout do?
Well, basically what we do is we go find players for the draft. We'll go to high schools and colleges and try to identify some players. And when we do, we have a West Coast supervisor that will come in and evaluate our player. If he likes him, then we'll have our national guy come in and evaluate the player. And if he's a top-of-the-line guy, we'll have the general manager come in and look at a player. So it's a collective decision, but I'm kind of starting it at the bottom, and we go from there.
After your baseball career, can you describe becoming a scout?
How I became a scout?
Yeah.
I sold real estate for a couple of years and found out it wasn't my forte, and figured I'd get back into, or try to get back into something that I kind of knew. And fortunately for me, I got hired with the Detroit Tigers and been doing it ever since.
How would an individual like myself with no experience in professional baseball become a scout?
You just try, especially nowadays with the way it's gone with the analytic part of it and the computer aspect of baseball. There's a lot of kids that are getting into this game because of that, and the only way you become a scout is to go watch ball games and have a feel for players. And being someone like yourself who plays, you know a good player.
Mm-hmm.
When you play against other teams, you can identify that, and that goes a long way.
Do you need any certifications to be
No,
a scout?
not to be a scout. No, you interview. They're pretty thorough now. They do the drug test, a psychological test. A lot of clubs, and they try to weed out the other guys, so to speak.
What skills are needed in order to be a scout?
You need to be able to evaluate tools, and the tools are big on the evaluation. We grade on a 2 to 8 scale, 8 being like a Mike Trout, a 2 being a guy that's probably in Double A or Single A who doesn't get out of that area. It's evaluation of tools, knowing makeup, knowing the kid, and gut feel plays a big part of it. And when we do draft a kid, it's just not the area scout's decision. It's a collective decision by the West Coast supervisor I'd mentioned, the national guy, and the scouting director, and even the general manager in some cases.
What skills from being a professional baseball player allowed you to analyze players?
What skills?
Yeah.
Well, you feel for the game. You played it like I said. You're playing at Whittier College right now. You can see a good player. You can identify a good arm. You can see if a kid can run. You can see if he can field. Can he hit? Does he have power? That all comes into play from experience, like anything in life.
How do you find players to scout?
Well, it kind of all starts we have a top guy at Notre Dame High School in Sherman Oaks, so I'll see him probably 5, 6, 7, 8 times this year. And when I go to any game for that matter, and you see a sophomore, you write his name, if you like, you write his name down, he becomes a follow. So you'll follow that kid for the next year or two, depending on what grades he's in. And then you write the evaluation when he's eligible for the draft if you still like him. But it's just a creation of follows by seeing other players.
What's the process of evaluating a prospect?
Well, you go to the game, you evaluate, you write a report. And then, as I said before, you have the West Coast guy, the national guy, and scouting director come in, and then we'll talk about the player and try to put him on the board in the right order when the draft rolls around.
What skills are you looking for in a potential prospect?
Well, like I mentioned, the tools. There's
Yeah.
5 main tools that we look at, and it's run, hit, power, field, and throw. And we grade on a 2 to 8 scale, 8 being the best, 2 being the least. And we evaluate the players the same way, kind of put them in a category. And an average is a 5, which an average is very, very good. I mean, average sounds, it's better than average, but it's just an average player in the big leagues is a good player.
If a player is what the Angels are looking for in the organization, what would be your next steps in trying to sign the...
Well, we have the draft, and like I said, everybody sees them. We go to meetings before the draft, a couple of weeks before the draft, and the whole country comes in with all the players we've seen, which is a lot of players. And you sit around and you talk about players and try to put them in the right order from top to bottom. So when the draft does come, if that kid you had here got picked, you take him off and the next guy moves up because there's 40 rounds in the draft, and you've got to be prepared to have your next guy in order.
What kind of relationship do you try to build with prospects that the organization?
Well, we have in-house visits. We evaluate makeup, get to know the kid as well as we can, which sometimes is hard, but I'm going into a kid's house next weekend who's a top guy, and I get to know the family as well as I can, and I've known the kid for a couple years. So you go as deep as you can, and as far as they let you, because makeup goes a long way nowadays. You don't want to take a kid with a history of trouble, because chances are he's probably going to get in trouble.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, yeah, you answered that. Can you describe like the different positions in scouting for the Angels?
Well, I'm an area scout. We have an area scout, which we have 3 of in Southern California, and we have scouts throughout the country that have their areas are divided up throughout the country, and then we'll have regional supervisors that will come evaluate our players that we like, and then on top of that, we have the national cross-checker. We'll see probably the top 2 or 3 round guys. And then we have the scouting director who will make the ultimate decision along with the general manager. If a player is a first rounder, the general manager will probably see him. And it's only because now the money's, and I'm not saying getting out of hand, good for these kids, getting all the money, but the money involved, we want to get it right.
Can you also describe the player development sector of the Angels baseball?
It's basically the same as an area scout, although once the amateur side is done, they go to the pro side, and we probably have 10 guys in our camp that evaluate the guys we've drafted and decide where to place them. We don't want to place a kid too high so he's overmatched. We don't want to place him too low where he's bored, but we have like a manager and a coach at a manager, a hitting coach, and a pitching coach at every team we have. Then we have roving instructors, and we have heads of departments, meaning head of hitting, head of fielding, head of pitching. And so the kids get seen a lot and evaluated a lot on the pro side. And like I said, the amateur side, once we sign them, it's kind of up to them to make them a better player.
All right. Can you describe a typical day of being a scout?
It's pretty typical. You get up in the morning, go to a game, and hopefully you see a player or two. You write your evaluation when you come home at night or the next morning, and then you do the same thing again. And out here, it's basically an everyday job throughout the year because of the weather as compared to back east or the Midwest. They only have a short time to see their players, and fortunately, we can see a player more than once or twice.
How many hours do you spend scouting?
Well, it depends. Nowadays, it's like if I go to Northridge, which is 45 minutes from my house at noon, and 2.5 to 3 hours coming home, so car time is as much as game time. So it's a long day. It's 8 to 10 hours, some longer, depending on where you have to go.
Yeah. Being at baseball games all the time, how do you balance your work and family and stuff like that?
Well, as I get older, my family is the most important thing. So, I mean, I don't want to waste a day. We have a thing called coverage. Like if I have a down day and I know that I don't have a prospect to see, I might just go see a high school game for a couple, 3 innings and see if I can see a kid for next year, or if I could find a kid for this year that slipped through the cracks. So, at this point in my life, I have grandkids and children, and I spend as much time as I can with them, which is hard to do nowadays.
I know you were at the Tigers and then you went to the Angels in your scouting career. Were these differences in the organization? What were the differences in the organization?
Really not a whole lot in my side of the game, because we all kind of do the same thing, although now with the analytics side of it, the computer side of it, it was non-existent when I was with Detroit. So now that's the big difference. Of course, if I went back to Detroit now, we'd probably be the same as the Angels, because almost all the clubs are going that way.
What kind of technology kind of helps you with the job?
I still just go scout. I do have a radar gun that'll give me velocity. I mean, you're sure I like a 95, 98 mile an hour fastball, but I like a guy that can pitch. The velocity part of it is probably the third on my list. I like location and movement on a ball, command, control, because if you can't do that with a 98 mile an hour fastball, it's a useless pitch. So, as far as other tools, I don't get into the analytic part of it. The guys in the office do, and they evaluate that. But technology is radar gun and stopwatch, and that's been going on forever.
What are the challenges that you face during your job?
Being right on a player. The money they give these players now, if you happen to get a first rounder, the $4 or $5 million they give these kids, you certainly don't want to be wrong, and that's why we do have so many other people looking at the top guys, because it's a major investment, and you certainly don't want that kid to go out and not do well. And if he does, it all comes back on the area scout.
All right, that's it.